Hi everybody, this is Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw, and we're talking more Mass Effect. Today I want to go over the big changes in the Mass Effect trilogy, specifically a lot of the Mass Effect 1 stuff. This is what got me most excited about the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, so we're going to go through that. And there is a rumor, and I guess it's more of a possibility at this point, that multiplayer could be added into the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. We will go through all of that in today's video. First, thank you to everyone who is liking and commenting and subscribing to my channel. I really appreciate it. If you find any of this interesting or of value, I would love it if you did one of those three things. All right, on to the video. This is from the Mass Effect subreddit and was posted by an EA community manager a little while back. And again, this was one of the big reasons I got so excited for Legendary Edition, because I didn't just want an upscaled version of the original trilogy. I don't know. For me, that didn't feel like enough, and they actually changed a lot. So let's talk about their changes. They're going to talk about combat tuning in Mass Effect, additional gameplay improvements in all the games, what they did with the Mako in the original Mass Effect, unifying and modernizing the trilogy for all of them, and this specifically really applies to Mass Effect 1 as well. And then Galaxy at War rebalancing in Mass Effect 3, mainly because of the multiplayer, which, like I said, we'll get to that in a little bit. There is a possibility that Mass Effect multiplayer is coming back, and given the hype around this and the excitement, I think it's possible. Okay. Combat tuning. Combat in the Mass Effect trilogy has evolved across the series, with each game's experience being different. We wanted to make the experience better across the board, but we didn't want to unnecessarily change what our fans have come to love about each game. That proved a unique challenge, as the first game is quite different from the second and third in terms of gameplay and combat. Mass Effect was heavily influenced by traditional RPG mechanics, and you'll notice this if you haven't played the original Mass Effect. It's very much in that line of D&D RPG. You'll see it with the skill trees and all of that, like the randomness of dice roll and pen and paper stat building. As a result, weapons in Mass Effect often feel less accurate and reliable than gunplay in ME2 and 3. We heard the consistent feedback that it was pretty frustrating to take a few shots with an assault rifle and suddenly have the reticle enlarged to span a large portion of the screen, so we looked at tuning the mechanics to provide better handling without outright scrapping the spirit of the original games. And I do have some footage of this on a previous video of mine, but I'm going to continue reading this because I do think it's pretty interesting. In the first Mass Effect, accuracy, including reticle bloom and weapons sway, has been tuned across all weapons to allow players to maintain more consistent firepower while still managing their shots and overheat meter. We've also improved the aim down the sights camera view to be tighter on combat so that aim down the sights is more accurate, like the second and third games, and we've improved the aim assist to provide better precision. These small behind the scene changes collectively make combat much snappier, putting more control in the player's hands. This is pretty big. And this is one of the things I think they needed to do, was really take account of the fact that the games changed pretty dramatically between 1 and 2 and modernize 1 to meet those other two games. So let's look at all of these changes specific to the first Mass Effect. Shepard can now sprint outside of combat. That's great. Melee attacks are now mapped to a button press instead of happening automatically when you're in proximity to an enemy. Weapon accuracy and handling has been significantly improved. This is huge for the combat. Relevant enemies take headshot damage. Ammo mods can now drop throughout the whole game. Previously, these stopped dropping at higher levels. I actually didn't know that. All weapons can be used by any class without penalty. That's pretty huge. That's kind of interesting because it actually isn't even the situation in the subsequent Mass Effects, but that's pretty cool. Weapons cool down much faster. Metagel use has been improved. Inventory management improvements. Abilities that have been rebalanced. I'm very curious to find out what abilities specifically have been rebalanced. Weapon powers, i.e. those unlocked with each weapon type skill tree, have been improved. Effectiveness and strength is increased, during duration reduced in some cases, and heat now resets on power activation. So pretty huge changes for the original Mass Effect and the combat in it. And they also talk a lot about, let's see, they have Team play changes and the UI around it. So the UI is going to look more like 2 and 3. They can be commanded independently of the other the same way as you do in 2 and 3. Boss fights and enemy in the first game have been tweaked to be fairer for players but still challenging. Cover has been improved across the trilogy. So lots of big changes, many of them in the original Mass Effect game. And of course, huge changes to the Mako. I have a video on my channel as well. Again, it's one where I say I think I was wrong about Mass Effect Legendary Edition, and it shows all the combat changes. It shows all the Mako changes, and I think they're really great. Improved handling, improved camera controls, new thrusters added. The XP penalty while in the Mako has been removed, so you can actually generate more experience from that. Touching lava no longer results in an instant mission failure, and it looks like it's easier to know when that Thresher Maw is going to pop up and kill you. So you're not going to get those constant, instant deaths when you first get to a new planet. There's also unifying Shepard's customization process throughout the trilogy. Obviously, the FemShep is now the standard one that I think was introduced in 3, was it? Or was it 2? I can't remember. But now that is the FemShep throughout the series. I've heard you can also select the older FemShep option if you want. New unified launcher for all 3 games. Updated character creation options. Achievements across the trilogy have been updated, which means an achievement now carries over from all 3 games. Example, kill 250 enemies across all games. Integrated weapons and DLC packs. This is also going to be interesting. Back when you originally bought these games, some people got different DLC. I remember, I think this was also back in the time where you'd get certain DLC if you bought it at GameStop and certain DLC if you bought it somewhere else or if you pre-ordered it directly from them. So now that's in the game and you can unlock it as you go rather than being able to unlock it right away, which would kind of make your power creep in the beginning just like crazy. You would just get really, really strong at the beginning. So this is going to be interesting to see. Additional gameplay and quality of life improvements. Audio is remixed. Hundreds of legacy bugs have been removed, and a native controller 21:9 display support for PC with DirectX 11 compatibility. They've also rebalanced Galaxy of War. Because multiplayer is no longer in the game, they can't give you Galaxy at War points for that. If you don't know what that is, it's something that happens in Mass Effect 3, and it is your galactic readiness level. You're trying to get the galaxy ready to fight the big threat. I'm not trying to give a bunch of spoilers in it. I know it's a pretty old game, but I don't want to give a ton of spoilers. Now, let's head over to the interview where some of the developers on Mass Effect have said maybe multiplayer is coming to Mass Effect. Let's take a look. This is from CNET. It is an interview. Let me see who this interview is with. Sean Keane interviewed project director Mac Walters and character and environment director Kevin Meek to talk about the ending of Mass Effect 9 years later and the possibility of multiplayer making a return. Here is the quote. The question, is there any possibility of the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer mode, which isn't in the Legendary Edition, coming back in some form? I got super into it back then because you could try all the different abilities and zip around as an Asari or one of the other races. It was a really cool multiplayer mode, and I know a lot of people who got super into it. My buddy Mike specifically played hundreds of hours of Mass Effect 3 multiplayer. The response, I would never say no to that. We want to see what kind of reception the Legendary Edition gets and what the demand for multiplayer is. And then we'll ask ourselves if we have the resources and time to bring it up to the quality level we and fans want. So what this means to me, I think pretty obviously, if they sell enough copies and enough people complain about it after they've sold those copies that they think putting this multiplayer mode in, they could then make money off the loot boxes inside of the multiplayer mode, they will work on it. And I think sales for this is going to be extremely strong. So there is a possibility this happens, but it's going to take big sales numbers, a plan for them to make all this money back, and enough people asking for the multiplayer for them to think adding it in will generate that revenue. It's kind of unfortunate that that's how things are, I guess. It would be nice if they just did it because they know a lot of people would like to play it. But those are the factors we are looking at as to whether or not Mass Effect 3 multiplayer comes back into the Legendary Edition. And I'm actually curious to see what would happen if they did it for the whole Legendary Edition as the Legendary Edition multiplayer. But that might be too much. It's probably just the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer. So there you have it. A ton of changes to Mass Effect 1, as well as the possibility of Mass Effect 3 multiplayer coming back. And of course, there are many changes throughout the entire trilogy, but Mass Effect 1 is getting the most attention, and it makes a lot of sense. It's the oldest game, and it needs the most work to bring it up to date. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think multiplayer is coming back, or is it just wishful thinking? Thank you all for watching and listening, and I will see you all next time. Shepard.